Hey, good afternoon. Today's video, I wanted to talk about how to build a fixed node tree and save that as a power grade. And then you can use that power grade if you set it up properly on all your footage to make things much easier. Regardless of whether the footage is B-RAW, C-Log3, Sony S-Log, you can use the same power grade. And if you build your power grade with basically in between two nodes that are color space transform nodes, you can take your camera footage into Davinci Wide Gamut, work on it, make all your changes, and then take your Davinci Wide Gamut, transform that into Rec 709, and then export that Rec 709 out to the web or distribution, whatever you're doing. So let's get into what I'm talking about. Let's build a fixed node tree, save it as a power grade, and see if we can translate that power grade from my B-RAW footage here over to some C-Log3 footage and see how that holds up. Okay, so we're in DaVinci Resolve here. I'm gonna press Shift-6 as a shortcut to hop over to the color page. And now we're on the color page. We can see I've got my clip here, and we have no node tree built at all yet. So first thing I'm gonna do is press Alt-S to add a serial node. Another shortcut for you. If you press Control-S, you can add a serial node before. If you press Alt-S, you can add a serial node after. Handy to learn your shortcuts for this program. Really, really helpful. Okay, so first part of our fixed node tree here is going to be the color space transform. Now, this is an effect that you have to get in the paid version of DaVinci Resolve, which currently I believe is about $295, which that is a bargain for this program, for everything. That's the full studio license for life, one-time fee, compared to other programs that charge you monthly. Okay, so for our first node, this is going to be our color space transform in. If we right click on this node, we can go to node label, CST in. And I'm going to do the same thing for our exit node. We're going to call this node label, CST out. All right, and then all you're going to do on these two nodes is you're going to put your input footage and your output settings. So let's go through this. Input color space, Blackmagic, wide gamut 4.5, Blackmagic film Gen 5. I'm going to turn that footage into DaVinci Wide Gamut, DaVinci Intermediate. Now, since I am transforming this footage into a working color space, I'm going to leave my tone mapping to none and my gamut mapping to none. But on my output node, we're going to take our DaVinci Wide Gamut, DaVinci Intermediate, and now we're going to export this to Rec 709, Gamut 2.4. And in this example, I am going to worry about my tone mapping. I'm probably going to go to luminance mapping, which has a slightly different color profile than DaVinci tone mapping, and click Custom Max Input and max this bad boy all the way out. This has to do with your highlights, so you don't want any of your highlights blowing out. See, if I take this down below 100, my image starts to clip, and it wasn't clipping before. So maxing this out to an artificial maximum there seems to help with any accidental clipping. Okay, so now our color space transform is done. I can highlight both of these nodes and click Control D to enable and disable these nodes. So we can see, hey, that looks awesome. So we're going from B-RAW, which is what I shot this footage in, to Rec 709. Now you might be wondering, why would you do it this way? You can just do all of that in a single node. If I just went, straight through, why are we using this intermediate space of DaVinci Wide Gamut, DaVinci Intermediate? Well, the reason is because when you work within this space, you can map any camera footage into DaVinci Wide Gamut and then DaVinci Wide Gamut out to Rec 709. And your Canon footage, your Sony footage, your Blackmagic footage, your Red footage, instead of working in their respective different color spaces, you transform all of those footages into a common working space. DaVinci Wide Gamut has a middle gray point of 0.3, I think it's 0.336. Whereas each camera is going to shoot at a different middle gray point. And then when you bring all that footage in, it can be kind of hard. You can get used to making your adjustments in a certain way. And so if everything has a different middle gray point, you kind of have to adapt to all your different footages, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's working very hard. Let's work smart. Let's adapt our footage to us. Let's bring all of our different footages into a common space. Davinci Wide Gamut, Davinci Intermediate is that wide space. And then it's easy to make all of our adjustments with the same set of tools before we turn that into Rec 709. Now, the other thing you could do is you could just turn all of your footage into Rec 709, work on it in Rec 709. That would be okay too. Davinci Wide Gamut is a bigger color space. You can make finer tuning of your adjustments and take that for what it's worth. Also, DaVinci Resolve, all the tools operate differently whether you're in DaVinci Wide Gamut or Rec 709. There's something called color space awareness, and the tools, like I said, they'll respond differently depending which color space you're in. And that goes way down a rabbit hole of whether you're in like a linear color space or a logarithmic color space. And then that math starts to peel off and fry my brain into a dimension it can't handle. But this is good enough for the basics. So we've got our color space transforms going so that we can work uncommon footage in a common space. Now, when it comes to building a fixed node tree, we're going to want to commonly do several things. So let's add a couple serial nodes, Alt-S, and let's label these as we go. So my first node that I'm going to want to adjust is my exposure. The second node that I might want to do, let's say it would be either white balance or saturation. Let's say white balance. And then for our third one, let's say saturation. Now, if this was all you were doing to your image, it would still be worth it. Within your exposure node, you can make adjustments to your overall exposure with the offset wheel. You can adjust your lift, gamma, and gain separately and fine-tune the image. Now, lift, gamma, gain is nice because they all overlap each other. So when you change your lift, you're affecting your gamma and your gain. So basically, when you affect you can use your lift to affect mostly your lows, some of your mids, and a little bit of your highs. Same thing with the mids. You're adjusting mostly your mids, some of your lows, some of your highs. And then when you adjust your highlights with the gain control, it's mostly highlights, but it's also affecting your mids and your lows. That overlap is really handy. It can give you softer, kind of more gradient adjustments. Then if you go into the log wheels here, they're slightly more separated out. So I can change some shadow adjustments here and just kind of stay in the shadow world without really affecting my highlights as much. And I really like going to log shadows after I've kind of done everything else. So my first step, looking at exposure here, I would just see, is this in the right spot overall? If it needs to be raised or lowered, I might go to offset first, see what that's doing. And maybe I can kind of bring my histogram a little bit more into the middle of its, area there. And then we can see my shadows are coming up too high. So let's go back over into our primary color wheels here. All right, so I've raised let's reset this whole thing. Raise my offset. Let's get our histogram in the middle here. Okay, cool. And then maybe we can lower that midpoint. That's looking a little more contrasty the way I might like. And then now I'd head over my log wheels and potentially drop just those shadows. And when your contrast ratio is looking nice by adjusting your exposure, then you can maybe go back over to your offset wheel and drop the whole thing once you've got the ratios looking good. So a lot you can do within the exposure tab to make things look more appropriate. And now these three first nodes would be kind of our correction nodes. We're not getting into any looks or any creative stuff at all yet. I mean, I guess this is sort of creative, but this is more technical on let's get our image bright enough and let's get it into the world that we want it to be in. The next part of that would be your white balance. So let's say this is an afternoon painting session for this truck here, and we're going to warm this image up a little bit. I'm just going to take my offset and let's just push it into the warmer section. Okay, so there's our white balance adjustment, just because I like that. And then saturation. This is where we're going to do one of my favorite techniques within DaVinci Resolve. We're going to change our color space of the saturation node. to HSV. Then we're going to right click, go down to our channels, uncheck channel 1, right click again, uncheck channel 3. Now, when you right click your saturation node, your color space is HSV and only channel 2 is selected. So you're only going to be affecting your saturation within this node. Now, the way you affect that is by changing your gamma and your gain. And this is going to make your saturation much deeper, much denser. And this is a subtractive saturation technique versus an additive saturation. So this is not going to brighten your luminance. It's just going to add more dense color. And let's disable, enable. So we can see what's going on there, and let's go full screen. Just getting a little deeper on the saturation. And that's my preferred method. So that would be my initial correction for a footage like this. Now, we're just kind of running through this. One of the big things about trying to develop your look, and maybe this, for example, would have a little too much contrast. So let's pull some of that contrast back, somewhere like that. So this would be our main corrections. And say we're happy with this footage, we'll move on to our next clip. Oh, wow, we got to do all that work again? No, you can actually just right click the previous node and you can apply grade. Cool. Wow, that looks actually great already. Let's undo that. Can we do that any faster? Yes, we can middle click if you have a middle mouse button, and that will apply the grade. There's also several shortcuts within Davinci Resolve where you can go ahead and apply the previous grade. And so we can see this is already doing a lot. And let's go ahead and on off. So there's our correction adjustments. We can see this was shot on the same day, but this was shot several hours apart. These clips are quite a bit different. And that actually looks okay. I don't know that they match or that these two clips go together in any way, but it's nice to see that our power grade that we're starting to build is holding up. Now, speaking of power grade, let's say this is all you had so far and you didn't want to lose it. You can right click, grab still, and let's label this because you want to label everything. Let's call this first power grade, which this is actually not a power grade yet. We just saved a still. So now you can go to your next clip. You can just drag and drop your power grade on, and there's all of your node information that you've worked on. Now, if you want to save this as an actual power grade, you just want to go on your left side here, go over to power grade, grab a still, and now you've got it in a power grade. The difference between grabbing a still and grabbing a power grade, your power grade is going to be available in any project that you open. Your stills are only going to be available within that specific project. So if you save a still, you've got to go into your Capital Video Pro project to get this still. If I'm in power grades and I save a still, then I'm going to have that available in any project that I open. Cool. All right. Well, that's starting to make some pretty good sense, and I like it. So from power grade or from still, you can apply a power grade. So hopefully this is helpful. This is how you can create your power grades. And a couple final notes on this. Let's actually bring in a clip. Let's run over to the media page here. Now let's grab a Rec 709 footage. We'll add this onto our project here. This should illustrate the example of how we can use that power grade to work on footage from any camera. So we'll drag and drop it onto our footage here. And obviously this is not right, looks terrible. That is crazy. So let's go to our first node. The only thing we have to change here is our input color space and our input gamma. So this particular clip was Rec 709, gamma 2.4. And let's go ahead and undo these adjustments. Also, here's the other thing. When it comes to Rec 709 and even C-Log 3, you're going to have to be very careful with your luminance mapping. Rec 7 or B-RAW and other RAW footage is much different than log footage. So I would say when you're working on log footage, you might not need to have any tone mapping at all. When you're working on raw footage, you probably do want to have some tone mapping. So let's go ahead and look at this. Now I've got the same exact node structure on here. And look at that. Since we're going from Rec 709 to Davinci Wide Gamut back to Rec 709, this pipeline is working. And I can go in here and we can make our adjustments. And this doesn't look so great because I believe the white balance was changed too much. So let's just turn the white balance off. These other two adjustments might be okay. So that's how you can work on Rec 709 footage right next to your Blackmagic RAW footage. And then say we threw in some C-Log 3 footage, all we would have to do is change this color space to Canon. Let's go find it just for an example. Canon Cinema Gamut. And then you would change this to Canon C-Log 3 right there. So that's just an example to show you how you can work with these different footages side by side by using a power grade, and then also starting to develop a fixed node tree. The other cool thing is once you have your fixed node tree built and you're dragging and dropping this onto your footage, now my saturation node that I've already built is subtractive saturation the way I like to do it. I don't have to go and change my color space and uncheck my channels every time because I've saved this into a power grade. So I love DaVinci Resolve. So fun. There's so much more we can talk about. And on my next video, I think we'll talk about actually maybe some look development and how to turn this into a cool looking image. Here's kind of a more advanced node tree I have. And yeah, so lots more to talk about, lots more to cover. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you on the next one.